Hey there guys, Optimizer here, and welcome to my PvP guide for using Vordt's Great Hammer. Now, the Great Hammer class are generally avoided by the community for a couple of reasons. The moveset is slow and the range is pretty short, considering how big these weapons are. With the exception of the Great Club, you don't really see many Great Hammers being used. Now, in terms of the moveset, the Great Club is the best due to its two-handed R2s. So why did I pick Vordt's Great Hammer? A couple of reasons. Number one, fashion, which is the most important obviously. And number two, the Perseverance weapon art, which I think is amazing. I would only recommend trying out this weapon if you're an experienced PvP player who have got their timing, spacing, prediction and anticipation on point. Otherwise, if you're fairly new to PvP, you're going to be struggling with this weapon. So let's take a look at the build. You're going to want to do a pure strength build, so use the warrior as the starting class and aim for at least 40 strength and build around that. I would always recommend, and this is particularly true if you're serious about PvP, I always recommend optimizing your build. Now let's quickly talk about the build in Frostbite. It can definitely kick in during a match where healing is involved. You'll know when it kicks in when you hear kinda ice shattering. In a duel, your opponent would already be dead before it has a chance to process. Starting off with the R1s, these have a very slow startup, but what it does have is lots of hyper armor, so once the hyper armor kick in, you're not likely to get staggered by them. It also has really fast recovery of only 6 frames even after landing 2 R1s. For comparison, the Cestus has a startup of 8 frames. With the one-handed R1s, the best thing to do is bait out an attack from your opponent, anticipate it, and you're going to want to hit out the R1 button before they do. So in effect, you'll be hitting them during their own R1s. Not easy to do, and most often you'll have to hyper armor through their R1s. But that's okay, because once you hit confirm with one R1, you can follow that up with a jumping attack, which gets you something like an extra 100 to 150 damage compared to the bog standard R1 combo. If your baiting, spacing and timing is on point, then you'll be able to land the one-handed R1s without having to tank a hit, and this just comes with experience. Now with the two-handed R1s, I find that you'll be more successful at hitting your opponent as they roll to your left. So you have to play a bit of a footsies game with them. You're gonna want to step in and out and vary the timing of when you're gonna throw out your R1, and you want to position yourself so that they roll to your left, whereupon you'll throw out an R1 and it'll hit them on the end of their roll. I generally like to mix up my one-handed and two-handed R1s in a single match because it messes up with my opponent's roll timing. So condition them with the two-handed R1s, they'll be conditioned to that roll timing, whereupon you'll change to the one-handed move. I like to do this towards the end of the match, and as you can see here, it's really effective. In closing, the one-handed R1 is also an excellent choice as a parry bait due to its quick recovery, as you can see here. Moving on to the R2 moveset, these are all vertical smashes. What these R2s have over the R1s is not faster speed, but very early hyper armor frames and of course more damage. Once you release the R2 button, the hyper armor frames start up after only 8 frames. However, it should be noted that they do not combo with each other. So with that in mind, the one-handed R2s are amazing at punishing overly aggressive opponents who like to counter-attack you with their own R1s even after you've hit them. If you're a heavy weapon user, you'll know exactly what I mean. So after hit confirming with your R1 combos, immediately throw out the R2. The only thing I would say is that you'll need to read your opponent correctly, as most people would prefer to roll away after you've comboed them. With regards to the two-handed R2s, I generally like to use this to outspace other heavy weapon users and punish their whipped attacks. During open play, it's very difficult to hit your opponent with this move. But if you're invading, then it's a perfect move to surprise your opponent. If you're feeling adventurous, you could also try throwing out the two-handed R2 after hit confirming with two R1s. Very difficult to pull off, and it will leave you vulnerable because it'll drain all your stamina. If it does hit though, it's gonna three-shot them potentially. So let's end this section of the guide by saying the one-handed R2s are also an excellent parry bait. Like the R1s, it has fast recovery. Now that we've finished looking at the standing moveset, let's go on to the rolling R1s. Whether you're in one hand or two hand mode, it's going to be a 360 horizontal swing. The one-handed version is quicker, but with less range and damage compared to the two-handed version. During open play, these moves excel at making your opponent back off when used as a defensive tool. I find it a hell of a lot more successful in hit confirming my opponent when I roll back and invite them in, rather than me rolling in offensively. So what you need to do is just roll back or to the side, watch your opponent, and if they get in range, throw out the rolling R1. It's definitely a move that's more successful as a bait than as an offensive tool. With the rolling R1s out the way, let's take a look at the rolling R2s. They are both overhead smashes, and what I really like about them is hyper armor kicks in really early. So after you've released the R2 button, you're looking at hyper armor kicking in after only 8 frames for the two-handed version and 14 frames for the one-handed version. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the two-handed version first. I tend to use this like I do with the rolling R1s, so invite them into your space, bait them and punish them. Use the early hyper armor to your advantage. If they're at a distance from you, then just charge up the R2. It goes without saying that you'll need to read your opponent successfully to pull this off. So what about the one-handed R2s? Well, I think it's an excellent choice as an offensive tool. The move has a ton of swag in the animation, and because the hyper armor kicks in only after 14 frames, you can hyper armor through your opponent's counter. Most people do not anticipate how early the hyper armor kicks in, so definitely use this to your advantage. Another great thing is that due to the initial delay, you can try using it as a wake up punish. It's not always going to connect, but the delay is just about right to hit confirm at the end of the medium roll. The delay is one of the best things about this move because it's going to be hard to parry, and it's going to catch people on the end of their medium rolls. The way the animation is with this weapon, it kind of causes people to panic roll, and as I said earlier, you'll try and catch them on the end of their roll. Now, it's quite difficult to pull this off due to the vertical hitbox. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to angle your roll in anticipation of where they're going to roll, and then you're either going to free aim or lock on to your opponent. Whether you lock on or free aim really depends on the situation and where you are in relation to your opponent. This judgment will just come from experience and is something I do on the fly. You've probably seen me throughout this video do running R1s to punish heals. Really, it's your only option with this weapon, and it's something you'll be wanting to do during invasions. However, did you know that a running R1, whether it's one-handed or two-handed, will break the guard of a medium shield after one hit? All it takes is one hit and bam, the guard is broken. I didn't know this until a few weeks ago when I started playing around with this weapon. So if you see someone with a medium shield, just try this out and have a smile on your face if they try and block it. Now we come to the weapon art, which is Perseverance. Perseverance is a really good weapon art, and it complements the playstyle of this weapon really well. It basically turns you into a tank, and all incoming damage is reduced by 50%. The duration is about 3 seconds, which is long enough for 2 R1 combos or 1 charged R2. I basically use this as a get out of jail free card. If I mess up my spacing and timing against a Dex user, then I just throw this out and tank the hit with a smile on my face, because it's barely going to scratch me. Once you hit the L2 button, the hyper armor kicks in straight away. So there is no startup frames, it's instant hyper armor for 3 seconds, which is obviously just amazing. In terms of offensive play, it's really easy, especially against another heavy weapon user. Because other heavy weapons have long startups, you'll have time to react, and all you need to do is throw this out, tank the first hit, and then counter attack them with 2 R1s of your own. It's almost unfair really, but hey, what you're gonna do? If it's there, use it. So that's the end of the PvP guide for this weapon, and in closing, I'm by no means the authority on PvP, so if there are any tips and tricks I didn't mention, then I'd love to hear from you. As well as that, please let me know what you liked and what you didn't like about the format of my guides and my content in general. I'm always looking for feedback, so feel free to message good or bad in the comment section below. And if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. This will likely be my last PvP guide until the second DLC drop, which is, I believe, in March sometime. Hopefully we'll see a nice variety of interesting heavy weapons, which I can really get my teeth stuck into. So yeah, see you guys after the new DLC drops, guys. Take care until then. See ya.